And we are live. Welcome, friends, to another Collectors Series episode. I got my friend Rob, sports card therapist. It's been a while. We've been trying to get this thing lined up, and I'm so excited that we did. We've had some really good conversations beforehand, and Rob's a great guy, and I'm very excited to have him on and talk about cards, his journey, and the hobby in itself. Thanks for joining, Rob.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on the show. You know, it's you came across my radar as soon as you joined Dustin on Sports Card Dad Network, and I learned that you had a lot of other shows you had recorded before with the previous group. But as soon as you came across my radar with Dustin, started watching you, started checking you out. Now you have the show with Jeremy Lee, who's a good friend of mine, and so you're doing it, man. You're killing it. I'm going to be working for you one day, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm having a great time. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants at this point. I've heard lots of wonderful people. Dustin's an amazing guy, and so is Jeremy. And having a blast with those two. And I'm very grateful for Cage and Andrew and all the opportunities that we're given there in that group. So I'm just very happy and grateful to be a part of the hobby, and then actually be contributing to it, hopefully in a positive way. And I'm going to continue to do that. So first off, let's do this. I always try to do this. We want to walk through the journey someone has in the hobby, and I wanted to try to learn a little bit more about what you do. Just talk to me, like walk us through the story of Rob and cards. How did it start? Obviously, we're all kind of looking at the same age. But when did you start collecting, and what brought you to this point right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine if I'm sitting here talking with you, who we are, just like you said, very similar in age, I would imagine our story is very, very similar. I grew up in a single parent household with my mom raising my sister and I. And, I saw my dad like maybe once a month or so. But the one thing that we really had that we both really enjoyed together was sports and cards. So, he would every time I was with him, he'd bring me to the card store, and I never remember buying packs. I always bought singles. From as young as I could remember, I just remember having my shoe boxes full of top loaders and going to card stores and going to card shows and all that fun stuff, and as I got a little bit older, probably got into high school, got out of cards, but continued to collect memorabilia, had a ton of memorabilia, just sports junkie. And probably back in 2010, I got back into the hobby. And I say got back into the hobby because I always had all my cards. Like I still have my Griffey Jr. cards from 89, 90, I have hundreds of them.
Yeah.
But I stopped buying cards when I got to high school. So started buying cards again, got back into the hobby in 2010 for a little while, but then came back full force probably 2019.
Nice. So came back in 19, and you now have a show that you run your own channel in sports card content. So talk to me about how that came about. How did you venture into that?
So I've always enjoyed doing some sort of content. I had a radio show at the local college here in Connecticut for years. I had a 2-hour hip hop show every Saturday night. Every Saturday night did all the records. I was doing everything. I was doing the boards. I was the one on the mic. I was, bringing on guests. I was doing everything. I loved it. Then probably I want to say 2018, stopped doing the radio show finally because I'm like, okay, I'm getting too old for this. So then I started up a mental health podcast and had a co-host. We talked about in a wide assortment of mental health topics, and she was great, but after I think we did 2 seasons, and it just kind of fell off. And getting back into sports cards, I mean, I said, first thing I want to do is I want to start a podcast. I already knew. I'm like, I want to start a podcast. It took me quite a bit of time, though, probably before I started it, maybe a year or two. And then finally started it up at the beginning of 2021. And, just kind of brought what I wanted to bring to the hobby was, my journey. I'm not going to teach anyone anything, but I also wanted to bring, myself, which is, what I do for a career. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. So I talk about a lot of collecting. I talk about a lot of, balance, self-care, that kind of stuff. And just kind of molded that all together. And it's just kind of evolved from there into whatever it is today. I don't even know what it is today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like you kind of merge what you've got an interesting story in what you do. I mean, we talked about this beforehand a lot, which I think is wonderful. And I have a passion for an appreciation for folks like you that are, working in that field and helping a lot of folks out there that need it. And I think cards in a way kind of bring people an opportunity for a distraction and give you some kind of joy and a separation from the daily life and all the different stresses and struggles of living, just being a human being. I do think there's a really neat connection to the fact that you're a psychotherapist and you're a card guy. So it's like you have these two things that kind of bring this calm and fun and easy. It just invites peace, so to speak. So, I mean, based on watching your programs and your shows, that's one of the things I took away. It was like, boy, there's a lot of peace involved. Just a lot of good relaxation. Your voice is very calm, but you bring this sort of energy, and I think that's a really good thing. You got a world right now. Everybody's pretty keyed up, so it's nice to have a place where you can just talk about cards, talk about and be relaxed and feel like you're in a safe place, a good place where you can find that kind of peace and all that. So to me, I think that's pretty valuable. We don't necessarily need a lot of folks out there teaching us anything at this point. I think people just want to talk about cards. They just want to talk about the hobby. I mean, we know the hobby's got all kinds of things going on, but it's neat to be able to sit down and listen to someone talk about their perception of hobby. What do they collect? What do they enjoy? What's on their list? What's the next card they're targeting? And what do they PC? And, all that kind of stuff. And how did they get their PC to where it is now? Those are the kind of things. So with that, I want to talk to you. I want to ask you about your collection. What do you collect? What are the cards that matter to you? Do you have a PC? Do you have a player that you PC? Talk to me about that. Like, what's that journey look like?
Yeah. So, I've always had a love for history, right? And I don't mean like history class type stuff, but I mean just learning everything I can about, significant events and over the course of, the Earth's existence, but also down to if, say, I'm watching, I don't know, Carlito's Way, my favorite movie of all time. Say I'm watching Carlito's Way. As I'm watching the movie that I've seen already for probably the 900th time, I'm on Wikipedia and IMDb learning everything about this. I'm learning about the movie locations. Just last night, I watched The Irishman. I think it's probably the third time I've seen it, on Netflix. And this morning I wake up, I go on my computer, and I spent an hour just researching the entire backstory of every single character, the inaccuracies of the movie. So point being, history, huge. And when history is something that's important to people, I think a lot of times they go toward vintage in the hobby. So vintage is something that I've really been fascinated by for years, ever since I was a little kid, getting Beckett magazines in the mail. And, every time, I think it was at the top of every set. It might not have been at every single set, but I could remember as there was the price guide going down the column, there'd be like a key card or a chase card at the top, a little black and white picture. And I remember always seeing these iconic cards, whether if it was, the 52 Topps Mantle, whether if it was the Lou Alcindor rookie, the Wilt Chamberlain rookie, the Bill Russell rookie, the 33 Gowdy, all these cards that are symbolic to the hobby and just have real historical significance in our space, fascinates me. So really where I found myself going when I got back in the hobby, Hulk Hogan, Mickey Mantle, top two of my PC pyramid. Hulk Hogan, Mickey Mantle, I have what I feel like is a deep personal connection to both of those athletes. And but the thing is, I don't collect any of the modern stuff. or
Right.
very little of the modern stuff, and only of Hulk Hogan. I don't collect any Mickey Mantle cards. I don't collect like the Bat Relics or any like a cut auto. I don't collect any of that stuff. But so as I've remained in this hobby, Hulk Hogan and Mickey Mantle have pretty much remained at the top. Um, but I've also found myself, I've always been enamored. I've always been in love with iconic rookie cards. It's just something about knowing you're holding this significant representation of a period of time. Talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. That's how I feel when I'm looking at a vintage card. I feel like these modern cards are absolutely on the shoulders of these vintage cards. And so I found myself buying iconic rookies that are signed in-person autos. Signed in-person autos. I mean, if you look behind me, I mean, I have like rows of them, so
Yeah.
if you're watching on YouTube, I have the Derek Jeter, the foil on-card auto. I have the Dr. J on-card auto.
That's cool.
This, the Dr. J, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, all triple auto grade 10.
That is awesome. That's a cool card to have all 3 autos on.
Oh, absolutely.
And the same ink too. Oh, yeah, there's my man.
Yep, 89 Upper Deck Griffey. So really, it just all these kinds of that's really the lane I found myself going down the last 2 years are the signed iconic rookies, and these behind me are really like the high end versions. The Gretzky behind me, these are the high end versions of them. I also have like the mid tier ones. I have stacks and stacks of them right next to me, right here. Mike Singletary, on card auto rookie card. So it's like even guys that maybe aren't really looked at as being super collectible, but are still Hall of Famers. Those I just have. So that's really where I've been putting all my money, and also Yankees and Giants teams, no current players, all past players.
Yankees and Giants. Yesterday I just won an auction for the 84 Mattingly 10.
I think you and I were probably bidding against each other, you savage.
I know. I was trying to get. I like that old slab. I've gotten better at not just going, okay, this is the cheapest one, or it's a new slab and new flip and all that, and not worrying so much about it. I started thinking, okay, examine the card and look at all the other cards that are for sale and a few of them that have sold, and just kind of really look at the centering in the back. I just felt that card was a really clean card. It was a really clean card. Older flip and slab, but I still felt that it really still was a 10. It warranted it. It's a great looking card. And I'm like, I've been doing all Griffey, and I sold pretty much everything I had just to load up on the Griffey 90s parallels, inserts, refractors. And I'm like, I just miss my 80s cards. I want to pick like 5 cards. I mean, my eyes on the 82 tops traded Ripken now, PSA 10. Like, I just want to, I just want to get a handful of those cards just to have. No, I don't need all of them. I don't need every one of them. But I want to get like the big ones, like maybe the Gwynn, the tops traded, and maybe the McGuire, maybe those 2 Fleer updates. Because I used to have a lot of those cards, and I sold them to buy everything else. And now I'm like, I don't have the money to go get them all right now. I might have to just slowly piece that. But I'm kind of thinking of putting one of those together. And it kind of like it's interesting how things change. Like you've been very focused, and you have your lane of the autos and significant players and cards, and then you have Mickey Mantle and Hulk Hogan. So you have like a little bit of a different. It's not all one thing. Like for me, I went all into Griffey, and I'm like, this is great, but it's also not as exciting. And the cards that I want are so much money. It's like I'm not going to get those. So
let me ask you something. So the Ripken PSA 10, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the 3-panel one, or are you talking about the tops traded?
The tops traded.
Okay, so I'm curious. So a tops traded PSA 10 right now, comps are 4,200. A PSA 9 comps are 368. So what is it about the PSA 10? Is it strictly from an investment perspective that you would rather have that than 10 PSA 9s?
Correct. I just want to hold the piece, the one that the best possible version of that. I know that grading could change. You think about grading, it could change, like the BGS or SGC.
There's a pop of 406 on that, by the way, PSA 10.
Right. So there's quite a few. from what I've learned with, at least in the Griffey market, pop 10s a lot on a PSA 10. But depending on the collection base, I feel like that's a pretty low pop for that particular card for the.
Yeah,
For
I would say so. Considering you were just about to enter the junk wax era, I would say that's a pretty low pop. And when you look at the PSA 9, a PSA 9 pop is 4,200.
Right, but that's why I feel like you're one of 400 people. I like exclusivity. I like collecting that. There's that piece. There's the piece that, okay, it's the best perfect. It's the best version of a very important card that I believe will still hold the test of time. I think the Mattingly will. I think the Ripken will. I think the Gwyn will. I think from there, Henderson's great, but I can't afford a 10, and I just feel like I want to make the 10 run. So I'll never afford a 10. So a 9, I've had an 8 before. A 9 is okay, but I'd rather have a 10. So I kind of go, well, if I can't get the Henderson, what's the next card? And other than Griffey or the top Bowman Tiffany or any of that kind of stuff, because I have the Tiffany and the glossy, but I don't have the Bowman Tiffany because it's just too much. I feel like it's Gwyn and then maybe the Fleer update Ripken and
wow. I did not realize, sorry to cut you off, I did not realize how low the pop on that Henderson is. Oh, yeah. There's only 26 PSA 10s, and the last sold price was $120K.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to touch that. So, like, all my cards I have together aren't even worth $120K. So I went from 180 slabs down to like I have 18 right now, 19 if you add the Mattingly.
Good for you.
So I just really condensed it down to the stuff that I feel like I would be able to sell it and not lose my hat. I had a bunch of Kobe's and like there's just a lot of them. Like you look at get the one card, the card, the tops traded is the card for Ripken. The Mattingly 84 Donners is the card. It was the defining card of the hobby. I mean, you can say the McGuire 85 tops. I just don't know over time will it be the card because of he's not a Hall of Famer, but maybe it still will. Mattingly's not, but then Mattingly should be in a way. I kind of feel like, but then. You look at the Gwyn, I mean, he's one of the best hitters ever. That's a 10. It's like 600 of them, I think. But still, that's a really important card. It's held. And you look at how those cards have performed over the past 3 years, and they've actually not done so bad. They've stayed pretty consistent. So it makes me feel like, hey, I don't have to rush to get any of them, right? Try to win them on auctions, the right card, because you don't want to overpay. And I've been like the guy who overpays for everything. But, with the Griffey's not so much now because of kind of really.
But if you believe in a card, I don't think there's anything wrong with overpaying a little bit. Now, obviously, you don't want to pay, double what the last comp was. But I had someone tell me when it comes to paying high for a card that you really believe in and that you really want, don't look at it as paying high, but look at it as paying early.
Wow, that's actually really interesting. I never thought about it that way. That's a really great way of looking at it. If you intend to hold, like I intend to hold what I have right now. There's only one card I'm left to sell. I'm trying to sell, and folks on eBay are just slow to pay for it or not paying for it multiple times over. But I think now at this point, I just have to set aside cash and save up. That's kind of and when they're the type of price you're trying to pay for some of these cards, that's going to take a little bit when you have a family of 4. So it's one of those things now where it's like it's going to take me a few months to get each of these cards every time, right? But I feel like they're pretty consistent, and I'm not worried about them jumping up anytime soon. So I think I could probably between now and the next couple of years put together a nice little run of the Fleer updates. I had both the Ripken and the Clemens, and I got rid of them to kind of do the Griffey thing. But I feel like, this is kind of the conversation we're having about. You buy, sell, you consolidate. And for me, I kind of found my lane. I'm like, okay, cool. But now I'm like, I kind of want to go back and do what I was doing before as well. I want to get back into these 80s cards. But then I'm going to be very specific in what I target. So I think that's kind of fun. And I think it's interesting when it comes to the hobby because you have to you kind of go through these waves. But then you sort of settle in and you're like, okay, I know now. Because I used to have 9s of a lot of the 80s cards. I got rid of those to try to get some 10s. And now I got rid of the 10s to get the Griffey. So you kind of go in these waves. Do you have you done that? Has that happened for you in your hobby experience? Have you kind of bought and then sold, bought to get this, consolidated? I mean, has that happened for you?
Yeah. I think it's I'm always curating my collection. My collection is just like forever, just kind of evolving and curating. I had a couple really big mantles at one point. Um, Ended up moving them because I was going to try to make a run at a really big Type 1 photo. That was going to be like big for me. Like, holy crap, I'm selling a 51 Bowman mantle rookie to try to get this Type 1 photo. Didn't get the Type 1 photo. Um, Pockets weren't deep enough, and I ended up, getting a couple really nice playing gear mantle on card autos. So I felt really good about that. Went and got the 64 Giants, and then the massive postcard. So I'm just like, so I'm constantly just kind of evolving, curating. I'll get away from like mantle for a little while, but I always come back. Same thing with like Hulk Hogan. Like I've continued to hoard really like awesome Hulk Hogan cards, but I end up kind of moving those and only keeping like my core 8, like my 2013 PMG Hogan, stuff like that, so really just holding those ones,
The best ones, the more the signature, like the cornerstones of your collection. Well, that leads me into the question, since we're really talking about an interesting subject, which I think is this is what's fun about the hobby, to be honest with you, the curation process and going back and forth. How did you do you have cards that are like, these aren't going to be moved, they're just staying with me because I don't know if I'll be able to get it back if I were to move it, or I don't know if I want to pay what I'm gonna have to pay to get it back if I were to move it.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a couple good conversations over the years. I mean, so many good conversations, but I had a couple good conversations with an old friend that I made in the hobby a couple years ago, Amil Sarfani. We started doing this show called The Bounce, and it was a phenomenal show. We did 40 episodes of it, and there were a couple points that he made. I went through this phase where I was like really starting to like, I was setting up at so many shows. I was buying and selling and moving a lot of cards, and I ended up, with a really nice Jason Tatum flawless RPA, and a really nice John Morant National Treasure RPA, and I could just remember being like, I don't even know why I'm getting these cards. Like, they're way too high stakes for me, that whole thing. And I remember him talking about how the importance of those cards and saying like, listen, I'm not saying those won't ever fall off a cliff, because we see those prices fall off a cliff all the time. But when you own the top 1% of a player's cards, there's always going to be a market for that. Even if the guy completely tanks, there's always going to be a market for the top 1% of a player's cards. So then I could remember talking through right before I sold to John Morant. This is like a year and a half ago. I can remember talking through like selling it, and he said, listen, you got to remember, if you move this card, you will never get another copy. And that's the way you got to look at it. It was like numbered out of 49. He's like, you will never get another copy. So those kinds of things, I think when you're dealing with certain cards, without a doubt, that stuff plays a role in your mind. But at the same time, it can also make us jump at a card because we know we'll never have another chance. Like,
Right.
I picked up this card at some point last year. It's a 1948 George Mikan, right? One of the most iconic cards of all time. Wow. This is like up there with like the Wilt Chamberlain, the Babe Ruth, everything, right?
Oh yeah.
This came across I've never seen a card of this magnitude in an Instagram story sale before. Never. It's in all grades. PSA has a little over 200 of them graded in all grades. So I saw it come across my Instagram feed, and I knew I had to jump on it immediately, because it's very likely. I think there was like 3 of them on eBay, but very hot prices, very overpriced, and I just jumped on it because I knew how rare it was. And that's why opportunities don't just happen. I think like you create opportunities. So by me seeing that card and me knowing the history of that card and me already knowing or having an idea of what pop reports are, that's why it's so important to really know your stuff, know what you're looking for, be educated on the stuff you're looking for, because when something comes across, your vision, you might only have a split second to jump at it.
No, that's a very important topic. I think I've talked about that before with Jeremy. We were talking about, I don't know what subject it was. It was one of the show subjects, and I was noting that, you know what, sometimes these cards just don't hit the wild very often, and once you see them, you're kind of, and you can tell, you can see, and you're not the only one thinking that, right? It's like those cards have like 100 and some watchers, and I mean everybody's on it the minute it goes to auction. Like my friend Joey Peapod has been like just selling a lot of his big Griffies, and I've like half my collection's stuff he sold me. But I'm very happy to, I mean, unless he wanted to sell those, I don't think I was going to get them. And those types of purchases are they're so rewarding. And you kind of feel like you're in this club in a way too, not just with the hobby, but just within the player collecting community too. But it's just exciting to have something, no one else has, or you have the highest grade of your, it's a fun feeling as a collector to like have that. But then it's, there's also this cool factor where you can sell something to complete somebody else's set, because maybe it's not as important to you as it could be to that person, but then you can get your cash, and then you can help someone else complete a set. And there's something about all of that community aspect of it that makes it really, really rewarding, right? You just don't have that anywhere else, right? You don't have that, hey, I really need this card for my set. Like, yeah, I really like this card, but man, it's going to mean a heck of a lot more for this guy to have this card, or this gal to have this card, than me. I can go get something else and I'd be fine. It's going to mean the world for that person. See, I would probably make that sale, because I feel like that's, I think that you just got to pay that kind of good stuff forward, and, it all works out in the end, right? I mean, there's plenty of stuff out there. So that's what I love about the hobby, and you kind of bringing that to the forefront there when it comes to, sometimes you just got to get stuff. You talk about paying for it earlier. Those are all really interesting topics and good stuff. So, all right, here's the question I have to ask. So we're going to wrap here in a few minutes. I like to keep these a little bit shorter. I think folks really enjoy them a little bit more when they don't take too long. I want to ask you this question. I've asked everybody else this question. If you've watched this show, you probably know. So, if you had to exit your house, you got a lot of stuff back there. I can see behind you. You had to leave real quickly. What are you grabbing? You just got, it can only fit in your hands. Your family's safe, but you got to get out of there pretty quick. What are you snagging?
Is it only a single card, or I can grab like a pile of cards?
You can grab a pile of cards, man. Whatever you can carry.
So I think I am grabbing all of my bottom row cards. And what that is I've talked about it on my show, how the bottom row of my case when I set up is usually not for sale. So, but I bring it because all of these cards, a lot of these cards, I've talked about how I've worked through these deals and discussed how I've been able to acquire certain cards, and to the point where listeners, they're invested in the journey, right? They're invested in these cards almost like I am, because they've heard all the details all the way through how I've worked up to them. So I bring the cards to shows, A, as like a conversation piece, B, because big rare cards definitely draw eyes and they'll stop people and they'll start talking. But also listeners and watchers of the show, they do like to see the cards in person. I would too, I get it, so I think I would grab like all my bottom row cards, and that's a lot of the cards that I showed you, already, like the iconic cards. You could see behind me I have those 2 playing day mantle autos, the Gretzky auto. I have the Ultimate Collection LeBron James. That's a Snoop Dogg rookie on card auto, by the way.
How cool is that, man? I love it. That is so cool.
Yeah, man.
I love the pop culture cards, man. I think they're fun. They're fun. I want to get a Kurt Cobain. Being here in Seattle, that was a big deal for me growing up. I want to get a Kurt Cobain, one of his first cards. Obviously, the auto is not going to happen, but it'd be neat to. I need to secure.
I think the 95 Panini stickers are what are considered his rookies.
The 95 Panini stickers?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. They came out with a big set in 95. There's a bunch of different like landmark years that Panini of stickers of musicians that they've come out with. Like 1968 is a big year. They have Beatles, Bob Dylan, all this stuff. 72 is a big year. I think 76 is a big year. '86 is a big year. Sade was part of that, and then '95. You know, it was like Nirvana, Snoop Dogg, Warren G, Puff Daddy. You know, all those people had like rookie stickers in them. So yeah, I'm just, you know, just like most people, I'm a big fan of music and film and stuff like that. But I take it usually like a step further, where like I know, you know, where they were born, raised, just like, you know, their family, you know, what they did as kids. Like if you're my favorite, you know, I'm just always kind of soaking in the information, and I think that's a big part of the reason why I collect vintage too, is because every day I'm learning something more and more about vintage and about cards and about the league, you know, about what it was like playing when they played, you know, what the atmosphere was like, and all the modern stuff. It's like I'm soaking all that stuff in anyways, because I'm such a sports junkie as it is. You
Right.
know, NFL, baseball, NBA, I'm watching everything, so I'm already soaking in modern stuff. So for me, you know, it put a little bit more effort in. Now I'm learning the history of everything. So
Well, I love that. You know, I'm a big Audible book guy. So when I'm doing my bike workouts in the morning or I'm driving to and from work, I'm always listening to some Audible book. I'm a big Jeff Pearlman fan. Jeff Pearlman writes really good books. And so I've read, I guess I'd call it listened to a lot of his books, like the book on the Cowboys and Bo Jackson. Right now, just finishing up the Brett Favre Gunslinger one, which is really
nice.
good.
Do you what speed do you listen to your audiobooks on?
Just normal speed.
Normal speed?
Yeah.
What about podcasts and YouTube shows?
Normal speed.
Oh man.
You got to go faster? Why? I've never thought about that.
Let me tell you something, man. Podcast and YouTube, typically I'm at either 1.75x or sometimes 2x. Sometimes, depending on the podcast I'm listening to, and I listen to multiple sports card podcasts of people that just kind of have a slower talk, and when they're talking like this, you know, like boom, you put that on 2x. Let me tell you something, man. Game changer. My wife thinks I'm nuts. She'll like overhear it real quick and be like, "How can you even focus on that?" And I'm like, I just do. So I'll take a 40-minute podcast and knock it out in 20 minutes and still retain everything like I would have been, because I think if I don't listen to it at a quicker speed, my mind will drift.
Really, I like having for me, I need the time, so that when I'm on the bike and I'm doing the 20-25 minutes, that gives me 20-25 minutes of content to like keep me engaged while I'm doing it. So I don't know how many books he has. There's a lot. I have the Dynasty book lined up. I don't know if he wrote it for the Patriots. That's the next one that I'm going to listen to. It's called.
And who's the author again?
For that book, I don't.
Well, what's the book you're reading now, though? You were saying
Gunslinger by Jeff Pearlman.
I'm just looking it up now. Yep,
yeah,
found it.
Yeah. You know, based on our conversation before this episode, there's a lot of stuff in there that's like, whoa, yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it definitely hits home. But yeah, like I've listened to the Dave Grohl one, the Will Smith story, the Dave Grohl story, Showtime, Lakers. Yeah, just a lot of really cool. My library. So yeah, The Dynasty by Jeff Benedict, The Dynasty. It's about the Patriots. So I'm going to listen to that next, and it's just fun. I dive in, and like you, I go and start looking up all these auxiliary characters and confirm some of the things. I watch videos that support some of the stories in the book, and it's just really interesting. You learn a lot about the person too, and you also learn the tragic. I think most people, especially a lot of these famous people, they're just tragic stories. Yeah. Tragic stories, and it's so sad. And there's also ways to learn too. You go, wow, boy, okay, you know, you're doing this, or you're not doing this. It kind of helps you guide a little bit. You learn from them, right? So I think but the history of it, to me, I'm with you. The history is really, really interesting. Learning how all the stuff came together and all that. So, well, anyway, Rob, thanks for joining us today. This has been really cool, very exciting. I'm happy to learn about your journey. Happy to learn about your bottom row cards, or the cards that would make the cut, so to speak. That would be the ones saved. Knowing you're a Mantle Hulk Hogan guy, I like these autos on some of these cards you have. We talked through journey. We talked through how you pay for cards, what to look for, all the good stuff. Thanks a lot. And so, and if you want to shout out where people can find you, your show you have, and IG, any of that kind of stuff, go ahead right now. Let us know where we can find you.
Awesome. Yeah, just sports card therapist, all the same places you find DPZ.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today. You're checking out the collector series, and I think we're going to have a little break for a while because I'm focusing on the show with Jeremy. So I think Rob's going to
Which
be the
is
last show for a little bit.
which is phenomenal, by the way. The show
Thank
that
you.
you do with Jeremy, you do a great job.
I thank you. I appreciate that. He's a great guy, and he's so professional. He just knows his stuff. He's been doing it for so long. I'm the novice. I'm just like hanging on to his coattails, and enjoying the heck out of it, learning, growing, having great conversations with a lot of great people in this hobby. Which I've said before is it's why we love doing this. It's just the community is pretty cool. So a lot of great topics to talk through. And again, between the chat, the people that are there live participating, and Jeremy, I'm learning so much, and it's really cool. So thank you for that, and thanks for jumping on. Thanks, Dustin, for having given us a home for this show, and thanks, Rob, sports card therapist. You guys all take care. We'll see you on the other side of it.